Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to be teaching you about text features. We're going to spend a couple weeks on this, and so I really wanted to give you a good intro so you have something to look back at in case you need a little help along the way. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Text features are really useful tools that you can find inside of nonfiction texts, articles, newspapers, your social studies and science textbooks. So let's go ahead and start looking. The first one I want to introduce to you is a title page. Title pages are found on the inside of books, and they're typically not the front cover. The title page is typically the first or the second page inside the book. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about text features. Now, text features are really useful things that you can find in nonfiction text. For example, in an article, in a newspaper article, or a magazine, or in your social studies and science textbooks. So this is going to be a quick presentation to show you examples of all those different text features, and you can use this at any point if you need a quick refresher. So let's get started. The first one I'm going to tell you about is the title page. A title page is giving you information about what you're about to read. So for example, it'll include the author, the title. It'll also include when it was published and where it was published. So in this example, in a book about Mexico, I can find the title page not here on the front cover, but on the inside. It's the second page, okay? The next one I'm going to talk about is typically the second or third page in a book, and this is the table of contents. And a table of contents is super useful because it tells you the name of each chapter or section of this book. So the example you see here is a book about frogs. Well, let's say I wanted to learn what a frog eats. Well, then I would go to page 10 because it's titled Diet, okay? And just to show you in my book, if I open up the page, here's the title page, but then this page is the table of contents. All right, now we're going to the back of the book. The index is always found in the back of the book alongside the glossary, and typically these two are very confusing. So I want to tell you first that the index, I use my index finger, and I'm going to show you an example in this book. And I go down with my index finger and find the subject I want to learn more about, okay? Now, an index is always alphabetical, and it's going to include topics that you may be interested in. They're not necessarily words that are defined or vocab words, but they're just topics. So for example, if I wanted to learn what type of blood these animals had, I would go to either pages 12 through 13, 16, or 31. And these are really helpful for research projects. So here's another example. And we're also going to talk about guide words in just a minute too. Now, the commas here, this is what this slide is showing, is the separation between pages. So it's not 14 through 35 if I were looking at the skin of an animal. It's saying page 14, page 21, and then page 35. All right, then we also have the glossary in the back of the book. So if I open up to the back, here's the back. Here was the index. On this page is the glossary. Now the glossary is different because the glossary has vocab words and definitions. Now what the glossary and the index have in common is that they're both in alphabetic order, okay? Now typically these words that are in the glossary have been identified by the author in the book by being bolded, a different color, maybe underlined, so you have to keep a watchful eye for those words. Now, when we talk about definitions, I also think about dictionaries because that's where we find definitions. So that's when we talk about guide words. Guide words are used at the very top of the page, and they tell you the first word on the page and the last word on the page. So this example that you're looking at, food is the first word, fruit is the last word. So if I was trying to find the word friend, I know that friend falls in between alphabetically food and fruit, and so it would probably be on this page. Can you find it? All right. And this is just another quick review. All right, the next one we're going to talk about are headings. Now, these are really helpful because it tells you about the subject you're going to be reading about. And they're typically much larger in size, sometimes a different color or font. And they're supposed to stand out, okay? Now, I know you can't necessarily see it, but this one says all about frogs. So information about frogs is what I'll be reading about based off of this heading. A subheading is what's underneath. And those are going to be different sections or chunks in the actual article to help me focus in. So let's say I didn't need to read this entire article. I only wanted to learn how it adapts in the environment. So I would go to the second subheading, response to environment, and I would read that section. This helps it break it up. So just to show you what it looks like together, a heading is much larger, then a subheading is a little bit smaller. And the word subheading, sub is a prefix that means under. So that's a good way to remember. Subheadings are always under the actual heading. All right, now we're going to talk about how the author might identify important words or vocabulary words. So this example has our words bolded. This could mean that they're identified in the glossary and defined, or they're just really important to the content you're learning about. We also might see words in italics. These are important as well because they want you to pay attention to them. This is why the author does this, is so that your eyes will be attracted to those words. Sometimes they're just facts or specific names. Now this is one of my favorite text features, bullet points. Bullet points are short and sweet and get to the point, so they list things that are important. So for example, in this one, it says amphibian types, and then it gives you a long list of different examples. Hyperlinks are typically this color blue, and they're underlined. And the reason I can identify a hyperlink is because it starts with www dot, and then it typically ends in .com. And what that means is it's a clickable link. So you can do two things. If you're reading an article online, you can just click the link, and it'll take you to a new tab and a new website. Now, if you're reading this in a book, for example, this book here has a hyperlink in the very back, right here. It means I would have to type this website in, and then I would be able to travel to that website. These are really important to know when you're doing research projects. All right, the next one is a text box. I really enjoy text box because they typically start with like a did you know or fun fact, and I love these fun facts because they always add to the content you're reading about. Now, text boxes are often off to the side, and they're long or small and skinny, so you have to keep a sharp eye out for them. And they are worth reading and not skipping over. All right, now we're going to talk about photographs versus illustrations. Now, typically, you'll see photographs used in nonfiction text, but sometimes we have to use an illustration because the time that we're talking about, for example, in social studies, Native Americans, cameras didn't exist. So even though it's still a nonfiction topic, we have to use illustrations to help us better understand what it would look like at that time because cameras did not exist. Now, when it comes to photographs, it's a pretty good indicator that you're looking at a real life image and therefore you're reading a nonfiction text. And again, here's the difference. Here's a photograph of a sunflower versus an illustration. Now, sometimes the author may use both in a nonfiction text. Now, the thing that I really like that goes alongside illustrations or photographs are captions. And captions describe what you're looking at in the picture. Okay? These are important because sometimes they add a little more content, to what you're looking at. And then sometimes it's exactly what you're looking at. So this example here is literally just telling you a tiny frog sitting on a bicycle seat. But what the author could have done is added more detail and told you what type of frog is sitting on that seat, and you would learn something from the caption. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is a diagram. And these are really great because they show you and label different parts of something. So for example, we're looking here at a diagram of a frog, and you're learning the different body parts. Diagrams can also be used for cycles and teaching you the way of something. So for example, the water cycle. Now with a diagram, it's really important that it's not just a picture, but it always has labels. Labels are what really makes a picture or an illustration turn in from an illustration to a diagram. So those labels tell you the different parts and pieces. Another one is a close-up. A close-up takes an image and zooms in so you can get a better picture of what you're looking at. For example, we're looking at a close-up of the frog's skin. Another one, and I'm sorry for the gross photo, is a cutaway. Cutaways are often used to show you what's on the inside. So this one's kind of gross to me, but it's a picture of the inside of a frog, and it's important because now I can see the different body parts of a frog. So it'll show you the outside of the frog, and then it'll show you also what it looks like on the inside. The next one is a map, and these are really helpful because they show you the location and helps us better understand the where question of what you're reading. It also often gives you a key, which is what that red arrow is pointing to help you better understand what the purpose of the map is showing you. We also have a timeline. These are really great too. They tell you in chronological order when something happens. So in this timeline, it's showing you the growth rate of a frog, but it also might be in your social studies textbooks telling you a piece of history of when something started, and in chronological order telling you when different events happen and explaining briefly what happened on that date. Next, we have charts and graphs. So charts and graphs are really important for numbers and giving you a quick visual of what the article is talking about. I always really like graphs because they resonate with me because I'm a visual person, and I can quickly see based off of a graph what's going on in the article. So for example, this graph here says National Frog Extinction Rate, and this dark green color says no threat, and it's the largest piece of the graph. And so that's a good thing, okay? But then if I see extinction threat, I'm thinking, oh no, extinction means bad because it means wiped off. So wiped off the earth. And so that's kind of a large section too. So that's concerning. All right, next is a table. Tables are really great because they organize information in a really great way that gives you a visual. So this is quickly telling you 3 different types of frogs and the species within them. So this is really helpful. Or not frogs, sorry. 3 different species of amphibians, and then all the different examples of the species. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a quick overview of all the different text features we went over. I know, it's a lot. So there's a lot to keep track of, but you'll have this video to look back at. I'll also be attaching the same PowerPoint I just used for you to use on your own time, okay? I hope this was helpful, and I can't wait to explore this for the next 2 weeks.